Okay, good afternoon, class, or good morning, or whatever time you watch the video, I guess, because we're going to try a new method right now for you guys to learn or do a RedLabs class, and that is by video. So you're going to have the ability to watch it kind of at your convenience. So as you can see, once again, I am in appropriate Patriots gear. So all of you people that call yourself fans, Cheyenne especially calling yourself a Dallas Mavericks fan, once again, I am appropriately attired. I hope that you are too next time we get together. So what are we going to talk about in this class? We're going to talk about business model design. So let's start off by, giving you guys like a question or something to guess. So a business model, I want you to guess who this is. And this definition here, go ahead and take a minute to read it, is pulled straight from the company's website. So I've pulled this straight from this company's website. They actually lay out what their business model is. So I want you to kind of read through this. I'm going to kind of be quiet for about 30 seconds. And I want you to kind of write down on a sheet of paper, or I want you to try to, in your head, guess who it is. The very last sentence gives you a little bit of a hint with the responsible drinking, the environment, and the community. So I don't know if any of you guessed it, but the answer is AB InBev. And if you look at AB InBev's brands and footprint, you will probably recognize a lot of the brands that actually are sold under the AB InBev name. Bud Light, Michelob Ultra, Modelo, all really, really popular brands. So what in the heck does Why Are You Guessing in AB InBev have to do anything, with business models? Why would that be here? Well, because AB InBev's business model is they built their company through massive mergers and acquisitions. And here's just a brief timeline of some of the ones they have done. I mean, in 2008, they bought Anheuser-Busch for $52 billion. In 2012, they went out and bought Corona maker, and Modelo and Corona, same maker, for $20 billion. And then they turned around in 2016 and bought Miller. And a lot of you probably know Miller for a $100 billion plus merger. So their whole business model is to go find best in breed beer makers, and then they buy them out all over the world. Whatever the best beer maker, most largest sales on whatever continent, their business model is go acquire it and then run it from there. So let's try another one. Who do we think this is? I mean, there's a pretty big hint, right? Has maintained its leadership position in the highly competitive sportswear equipment and apparel market. So that would get you into, a world of, 8 companies, maybe Puma, Reebok, Nike, Under Armour, etc. But this happens to be Nike. So again, what does this have to do with business models? Well, if you go back and look at it, it says their business model design, it focuses on core activities, design, development, and marketing. Those are their core activities. They're going to outsource everything else. They're going to outsource their manufacturing to contract people. So they're not interested in making their own shoes. Their whole focus from a business model perspective is on design, development, and marketing. So that's where they're going to put all of their resources. So that, again, gets us back to Nike. So what in the heck does this have to do with you guys? You're probably sitting there saying, okay, now we're like 2.5 minutes into this class and I still don't know how this applies to me. Okay, so let's talk about that. So you have a new some new company. An entrepreneur comes up and builds some innovative product. But yet, for some reason, this product does not translate to a successful business. And the entrepreneur's like stumped, like, why does this not work? And I mean, I just loved the picture of this baby's face because it's like, that's exactly how you feel like this should have worked, but it didn't work. How come this didn't work? What the heck went wrong? Well, here's what it really takes. To succeed, a new co must identify the following things. Customer segments. We've already talked about that a little bit in the program. You guys are already talking about and working on end user profiles, target customers, etc. You have to have a value proposition. Again, we're already talked about that a little bit in classes. You guys have had a little bit of work around value proposition, and I know you guys are all working on developing these. So you have to have a great value prop. You have to have delivery channels. You're going to get some talking to later on in the course about this. Same for branding and messaging. You're going to get taught some stuff later on in the course. But then you have to have a revenue strategy and a profit formula. That's what it takes. So you must design a proper business model. All of those components are part of a proper business model. If you don't focus on all of them, and a lot of focus, hence the bold, on your revenue strategy and your profit formula, there's really no way that your company will succeed. So what is a business model at its core? Well, a business model describes the rationale of how you, as an organization, create, deliver, and capture value. It's the blueprint that you follow towards success. And that blueprint is applied through all of the structures, processes, and systems that you put in place as a company. Or simply put, your business model is the way a company generates revenue, your company generates revenue, and makes a profit from the company's operations. Notice we're saying makes a profit. We really, really want you guys to develop business models that make you profitable. So we're going to get into a little bit more detail on this. So we've already talked about before that a business model has a product or service at its center, that it needs to be focused on the customer's need. That is why you guys got classes on interview questions and going out and learning what is the customer's need and making sure you're building your product to the customer's need. Customer segments, we've talked about that, end user profiling, who are you targeting? Value proposition, what is the value you're creating for the customer? The different channels you're going to sell through, your branding and messaging. In other words, how am I going to communicate the value of my product to my customer? What story am I going to tell about the product I am bringing that will entice the customer to want to buy or purchase my product? And then your profit formula, right? Is the value created? Is the value I bring worth the price I'm charging? So, is the value that I get out of this, the meal I've eaten, is it worth $10, $20, $30, $40? If you want to charge $40 for a hamburger, that better be one great hamburger to have $40 worth of value created from that price charged. In other words, that hamburger must be big enough if I was going to pay $40 to feed 6 or 7 people, because otherwise the value created from a hamburger is not worth the price that you charged. So we talked a lot about profit. You have to have a profit. Well, profit formula, not that I didn't think any of you would be confused by this, but I thought I'd better at least talk about it. It's the revenue streams, or my revenue, the money I'm making, minus everything it costs me, my cost structure, to actually produce my product or service. That gets me my profit. So it's revenue stream less my cost structure equals my profit. Super simple. Everybody already knows this. It's like A minus B equals C. That's what we're after. Or in this case, R minus C equals P. Revenue minus cost equals profit. So we want you to make sure that as you go through this program over this summer, that you're thinking about your profit formula, that you're thinking about figuring out revenues, costs, and profits, because it really has some impact. We're going to talk about these just in a little bit more detail to help you out. So revenue. Revenue streams, what revenue streams does the business have? That's one of your first questions you have to ask. Is it I only sell hamburgers, or is it I sell hamburgers, fries, drinks, and I have other things? Is it I only sell them in a food truck, or is it that I also have a delivery service? What are the revenue streams? Where am I getting income for my business from? For each one of those, you have to ask questions and look at, how are my customers currently purchasing? How do they purchase right now? Are they walking up to the truck, but they wished that it was delivered to their door? In other words, how would they like to purchase? How do they purchase? They walk up to my food truck. How they would like to purchase is they wished I would deliver it to their dorm room, in the case of maybe a food truck that works on a campus, right? So I would want to be getting that type of information from the customer interview questions I'm doing. How would they like to purchase? That will impact how I'm thinking about revenue streams. What do they currently pay? Do they currently pay $10 for that hamburger? Do they currently pay $5 for that hamburger? But what are they willing to pay? So as you're talking to customers, yeah, I pay about $5 for a hamburger right now. That's what I currently pay. But I'd be willing to pay $8 if it was delivered to my door and it came wrapped and stayed hot. Okay, now I have some data that I can do something with that will help me with my revenue side of the house. How are they currently paying? Well, I have to always pay cash when I go to the food truck. You guys only take cash. That's how they're currently paying. But I would prefer if you could take Cougar bucks, or I don't know what Rice's bucks are called, the money that Rice uses on their campus. Maybe it's Owl bucks. Or maybe they would prefer that they could Zelle money to you, or that they could PayPal for the month, for that, or they could Venmo you. All of the different ways that college students now pay for things. So how would they prefer to pay? So you have to kind of look at, this is how they currently are doing, but you know what? All my interviews told me they would rather do this. That then factors into your thinking about revenue. Okay, so you have to get all of those questions answered. So when you really think about a business models only have two levers. That's it. They have two things that they can pull to change what they're doing. One is revenue, or your pricing of your product. The other is your cost. How much is it costing you to get the things that you need to put into your product? That's it. There's no other magic things floating around out there. If you're trying to make profit, you have two things and two things only you can look at: pricing and cost. There is nothing else. There is no magic formula. There's nothing else. It's that basic. It's that simple. So when you do your projections and you start looking at what my profit is going to be, and you realize it's not where you would want it to be. Boy, I was hoping I would make 10% to my bottom line, and after I've done all of my analysis, I'm only making 2% to my bottom line. Go back and look at your pricing, and go back and look at your costs, because those are the only two factors that you have to consider. So pricing. How do I price my product? If it's one of the two major factors I have, then how in the heck do I go about figuring out what makes up a good price? So setting your price, kind of knowing what to charge, it's one of the most critical factors in the success of a business. If you get this right, a lot of other things then go right. There's this expression that one of my business mentors told me one time, and he goes, "Hey, Steve, I've never met a business problem that can't be solved without more revenue. One of the key components of revenue is price." And so he used to always ask me, "Are you sure you're charging the right price?" And I was always like, I don't know. Not sure if I'm setting the right price. I mean, the right price, right? That's one that's not too high nor too low. If I'm too high, my customers aren't buying. If I'm too low, I'm giving away potential profit. So how do you know what is the right price? So we're going to talk about some pricing strategies to help you figure that out. So something you have to always consider when you're talking about price, and that is the marketplace. The marketplace sets the price. If there are 3 hamburger vendors on your university's campus, and one sells for $5, one sells for $4.95, and one sells for $5.25, it's very difficult to you come in and to compete in that marketplace if you're going to try to price your hamburger at $9. Because that marketplace is setting the price, and the price that's being set by the marketplace right now on that campus is, give or take, right at $5. So that marketplace and what is going on in that space has a huge impact on what people are willing to pay, and what they're willing to pay then has a lot to do with how you can charge, or what price you can charge for your product. So that gets us to this competitor pricing piece, right? 3 people on campus, $4.95, $5, $5.25. That's an overriding condition that I have to think about. I have to consider that when I am going to set the price for my hamburger that I am now bringing on campus. Now, if I can truly do something that's different, I'm going to deliver. The people don't have to walk up to my truck. I might be able to increase my price for that. I'm going to take payment in a way that they would not otherwise, all these other trucks don't accept, whether that's Venmo or PayPal or Cougar Bucks or Owl Bucks or whatever those things are. That might allow me to move my price up. But now we're going back to what we were talking about before. Some of the things that will make you different. What makes your product different? What makes your product unique? What makes your service different? What makes your service unique? So when you come up with some of those things, it will allow you to charge differently than what the marketplace is dictating, only and only if the customer perceives the value from that. Which again, all of these questions that you're going to be asking to customers and to these target customers, when you build your questions list, some of that data will help you here. Because if they're telling you again, like we talked about earlier, man, it would be great if that was delivered to my dorm room, or it would be wonderful if I could get that in the following way, or I could pay in the following way, then you have some room, despite what the marketplace is doing on your campus right now for hamburgers, you have some room to charge a little bit more. Okay, so pricing approaches. Let's look at 4 big kind of pricing approaches, okay? We're not gonna go through each one of these in detail. We're not gonna go through skimming and penetration and prestige, but there's basically 4 ways that you can approach pricing. There's this demand-oriented approach. We're gonna talk about that. And inside of that, there are all sorts of different ways to do that, which is skimming. In other words, I'm gonna skim the very cream off the top, and then I'm gonna slowly lower my price. Or I'm gonna set a penetration price. I'm gonna set this really low price to penetrate the market. Then I'm gonna try to expand out and raise my price from there. Maybe prestige pricing. We talked about that with Standcraft boats in one of the other deals, right? A really high-end product, very differentiated, and I'm gonna go price that in the, in the boat category, at 500,000 and up per boat, right? And then there's other ones in there, odd and even, Target, bundle, etc. Bundle, I'm gonna, if you buy a hat and a shirt, you only pay, $30. But if you just buy the hat, it's $20. If you just buy the shirt, it's $20. But bundle pricing is I'm gonna put the two of them together, right? So those are all different demand-oriented approaches. Cost-oriented approaches are all about you figure out your costs first. How much is it costing me for everything that I'm going to put into my product? So let's go back to our hamburger example. What is the cost of my meat? What's the cost of my bun? What's the cost for all of the condiments? My tinfoil wrapper, the guy to deliver it, the pickles, I don't even know what else, tomatoes, lettuce. I don't put any of that stuff on a hamburger. That's like in the vegetable category, which I try to stay very far away from, but that's okay. But anyway, you figure out all of your costs. What are all of my costs to my product? And then you add either a markup or some sort of percentage to it, and then that determines your price. A profit-oriented approach is the exact opposite of the cost-oriented approach. And we're going to go through one example of each one of these again, I'll tell you, so don't get all blown away if I'm going too fast. Profit-oriented approach is you track your costs, but you're like, I want to make X in profit regardless. And so, or I want to make X return on investment. If I put $100,000 in and I want to make 10% return, then I have to have $110,000 as my total revenues that come back in because I'm looking for a return on investment approach. So I have an example, I think, of target profit that we're going to talk about when I get to that. And then competition-oriented approach is more what we were just talking about based on the hamburger stand, right? All of the people are customary, they're used to paying, the custom that they pay is $5 for a hamburger. So that's kind of what competition has said price should be. The customary cost for a hamburger, $5. So I can then price it at or below market a little bit, maybe a little above, maybe a little below, depending on what I want to do. Then, kind of the other one that a lot of people do, and there was like a loss leader, like maybe I run a New England Patriots gear store, and I'm willing to sell hats at a little bit of a loss. While it costs me $10 for each one, I sell them for $8, which makes me the lowest guy around for hats, knowing that when somebody comes in and buys a hat for $8, they're almost always buying another product, whether that's a shirt or a jacket or a jersey. And those I have like a lot higher profit margins on. So I'm willing to take a little bit of a loss for my hat in order to sell the others for more money. So how does that apply to you? You're going to have to really think through those. So here's just like a simple graph for a demand-oriented approach, right? Price of chocolate, household demand. If there's more demand, you can follow the blue line or the blue curve. The more demand, then I can charge more for the chocolate. The less demand, as I slide along that x-axis, then the less I have to charge, which you can see prices running on my y-axis. And so it literally, the cost of my product is fluctuating with demand. So that's a demand-oriented approach, and that's how you would price chocolate, for instance. A cost-oriented approach, markup pricing. Let's just look at a simple markup pricing example. It's a percentage of the cost or of the selling price. So the equation, selling price equals cost divided by 100 minus percentage markup times 100. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm back in algebra. Please don't do this to me. Super simple, right? A shirt costs $25 to produce, and you want to sell it at a 60% markup. So the equation is simple. 25 divided by 100 minus 60 times 100. And I've given you the math to help you out. So 25 divided by 100 minus 60 is 0.625 times 100, or $62.50. And that's what you would sell your shirt at if it cost you $25 to produce and you wanted a 60% markup. Really simple, cost-oriented approach kind of equation. A profit-oriented approach. So in profit-oriented approaches, this Bart Simpson thing is what you have to remember. Your price is not based on your cost. Your price is based on how much money you want to make. And this here looks like a massive chemistry formula. SP times Q equals VE times Q plus FE plus TP. And you're like, what does any of that mean? Super simple, right? SP equals sales price per unit. Q is your quantity of units to be manufactured and sold during the period. VE are all my variable expenses to manufacture and sell a unit. FE, my fixed expenses. TP, my target profit. Super simple, right? You're like, no, really it is. You can figure out every one of these right now. As you go through the summer, you can figure out what is my sales price per unit, what is my quantity. You can figure all of this out. So let's give you an example. There's product X, doesn't matter what product X. I don't know what I need to sell it for. I know what profit I want to make, but I don't know what I want to sell the price for that will generate that profit for me. Because remember, in this example, I am trying to figure out the sales price based on how much profit I want to make. So product X, a unit of product X sells for, well, I don't know. Well, I know my variable expenses are 50. I know my total fixed expenses for the first quarter of the year are 40,000. I know I want to earn $80,000 for the first quarter, and the quantity I know I can sell is 4,000 units. So let's look at our little formula. SPQ equals VEQ plus FE plus TP. Let's just shove our numbers in. And I did it every single step of the way because, you know, I'm not really good at math, and so I figured I'd help you out with it. So at the end of the day, you would have to sell each unit for $8,000 to get $80,000 profit in your first quarter, based on what you know your fixed expenses are and your variable expenses are. So that's just one target profit pricing example. Finally, we have competition-oriented approach. And this is that customary one. And we've talked about this a lot already today with kind of the hamburger pricing, $5, $4.95, $5.25. They're going to resist prices that are above a level that they expect them to be. In other words, if you're trying to sell your hamburger for $8 and you're not delivering it to their room, and you're not doing anything special with it, they are going to very much resist paying that for it. Because they're typically actually going to be attracted to prices that are below what they expect. So if they're expecting to see $5 and yet all of a sudden you come out at $4, that's going to attract them a lot more than you coming out at $6, even though it's $1 on either side of the customary equation. So here's our little example. And I know a lot of you know this, like streaming music, by and large, about $9.99 a month for unlimited streaming music. It's kind of a common expectation now. So if I launched a service that charged $11.99, I'm probably going to see very few subscribers because they're used to paying $9.99. Even if I offer a few premium features, I'm still probably not going to see that many subscribers. However, if I launched a service for $7.99, I'm probably going to attract a lot of business without too much effort because I've come in $2 below customary pricing. They're used to seeing $9.99. I'm only $7.99. If I can actually deliver for that, I will probably attract quite a few customers. Okay, so those are all of our pricing kind of things. Okay, so that's ways to consider different strategies for how you want to price your product. And remember, we said there's only two things to think about: pricing and cost. So what are some considerations on the cost side of the house? Well, the first question you have to answer are, what are the most important costs inherent in our business? If you're a hamburger guy, one of the most important costs is my meat, because what does it cost me for my meat is probably the vast majority of what it is going to cost you to actually produce the hamburger. So if you're a shirt manufacturer, what does it cost me for my material? If you're a software provider, once you've actually done all of the software writing, it's probably what is the cost for either my hosting site, or what is the cost for my maintenance, or what is the cost for my support people. So you have to think through your business and start figuring out what are the most important costs that my business has. What are the resources that are the most expensive? In the hamburger one, probably the chef or the guy cooking is the most expensive resource. The person just taking the order doesn't need to have the same skill as the person cooking. So maybe you don't pay quite as much for the person taking the order as you do for the person cooking. So the most expensive resource is the person who's actually cooking. So you have to figure out which resources are the most expensive. And that's not just personnel resources. That's also other types of resources that you would have in your business. And so, you know, there's physical resources, personnel resources, etc. And then you have to figure out what are the key activities, or what key activities are the most expensive. You know, is it the shipping of the product? Is it the manufacturing of the product? Is it the support of the product? But you have to be able to get your cost structure broken out and figured out what are the things that are the most expensive to me. And as you get those cost structure considerations, remember when we looked at revenue minus costs equals profit, we want to be able to, if profit's not where we want it to be, and we're looked at revenue already, and we've looked at our pricing, we're like, can't do anything more there. Now I look at costs. I want to look at costs based on this priority. Because if I'm looking at the most expensive things, then those are the things that will have the ability to move the needle the most. Whether I can do it by buying in bulk and lowering my price, or I can find a new supplier lowering my price, or I can find an alternative way to get something done or shipped, lowering my price. But that cost factor is what needs to be considered. Here at the end of the day is where you have to be though. You got to figure it out. A lot of teams will end up running through this kind of summer program, and they make these huge, broad assumptions about their costs. And at the end of the day, they're just not accurate. They start trying to finish the program, and they figure out, wow, that wasn't good. I can only sell my product for 10, and I was kind of thinking my cost would be okay at 8, and I would make $2, and I've now figured out my costs are 11, I can only sell at 10, and I can't even make a profit. So you have to come up somehow during this program with solid estimates. Remember what we've talked about. You've got to move from I thinks to I knows. That's why I have this no I thinks on this page. No more I think the meat for my hamburger will cost $2 per patty. It has to be I know it will only cost me $2 per patty. So you have to get there. So you've got to do work on figuring out what your costs are going to be and coming up with some good solid estimates on that. Okay, so that gets us to business models, right? There's all these different business model types. That's the information you need: revenue and costs and profit, and how do I look at things. But now, how do I sell my stuff, or how can I bring it to the market? And so I'm going to run you through, this isn't all of them, there are tons of different model types out there. I'm going to run you through kind of, I don't know, 10 or 15 really quick big ones. Everybody knows what retail is, right? I'm going to sell directly to the public, but I've purchased it from a distributor or a wholesaler. You know, like if you think about Macy's department store, that's what they do. They're buying their product from all over the place. They're putting it in their retail store. Customers are walking in and buying it. There's franchise model, right? I'm going to use the model from the parent company. I'm just going to give them a royalty. Subway, Dunkin' Donuts, those are two great examples. You know, I'm going to not have to think too hard because they've already developed the business model, and I'm simply going to replicate it down in my franchise. There's e-commerce, right? I can sell products by putting a web store on the internet. This is Nike. Now, Nike also sells through retailers, so they have two different places that they're, you know, pushing their product, if you think about it. So, you know, I can sell products by creating a web store on the internet, and right now, there's all sorts of e-commerce going on, as everybody knows. There's these freemium models that everybody talks about. In other words, I want to offer some basic services for free, but then I'm going to charge a premium for these extra add-ons. Two really popular ones right now: Zoom, which I'm using to deliver this class, and Spotify, right? Spotify has a free service, but you have to listen to a bunch of ads, or you can pay, I think it's like $9.99 a month. It might be slightly more, but then you don't have to listen to ads, and you can have unlimited playlists and do all sorts of stuff inside of Spotify. But their freemium version, you can use their product as long as you don't mind how they pay for that free version, which is advertising. You could be an aggregator. In other words, sell various products or service under your own brand. This is what Uber and Airbnb did. Uber doesn't own all of the cars. They don't pay all the drivers directly. They've just aggregated the fact that John had a car, and Bill had a car, and Sue had a car, Bob had a car, Jane had a car, and all of them wanted to drive and make money. by being a new form of taxi service. So they aggregated all of those independently owned cars and they created a service, Uber. Airbnb did the same thing. All of these people who have houses or rooms that they want to rent, Airbnb offered them a platform to do that under, and then they just took a commission from those sales. So they're kind of an aggregator. That's a business model type. You could aggregate your services, aggregates others' things and create a service out of it. Manufacturers, everybody knows what a manufacturer is. You take raw materials, you create a product, you sell it. Ford builds cars. 3M, Post-it notes, by the way, 3M, right? And 3M does also masks and tons of other products, but that's just straight manufacturing. So that's one model you could do. I'm going to be a manufacturer. Subscription-based, long-term contracts paid over time. Netflix is a great subscription-based model. If you think about it, you pay whatever it is. I know they have different levels, I think, but let's say 17 bucks or 18 bucks a month. You get unlimited access to the Netflix library, and you just keep paying month after month after month. Your cell phone, a lot of times your cell phone contracts are the same way. Dollar Shave Club broke into the market by offering a subscription shaving service. We're going to deliver you the blades to your house. You get our handle and blades on the first one, then blades keep coming in after that, and it's hard to switch because all blades don't fit all handles. And so now you're kind of locked into a model, a subscription model. Licensing or data licensing. Companies collect your data, all this user data, and then they sell or license it to other companies. Twitter does this quite a bit, by the way. They're aggregating and collecting data, and then they're selling it out and licensing it out to other companies. This online local delivery model. You can order something online, but pick it up from a local physical location. Walmart and Target both do this now. I can go to Walmart online and then go to my local Walmart store to pick up the product. There's ads, free services offered on the internet, and the revenues earned from the ads. YouTube, Facebook, two huge examples of this, right? YouTube gets its revenue from advertising. Facebook gets its revenue from advertising. Google gets its revenue from advertising. Pay per click. It's not so much advertising on it is advertising on Google, but it's not as in your face advertising. It's links and stuff. It does say ad next to it, but YouTube's are a little bit more like the whole ad starts to play right in your face. At least in Google, you have to click it and select it. Affiliate marketing, promote a product or a service and you just get a commission from someone else who buys it. That would be GoDaddy and Rakuten, who's a sponsor of a soccer team, if you didn't know that. Software as a service, Office 360. Software as a service. I'm going to offer software. It's going to be hosted in the cloud for you. And then you subscribe to it and you pay a monthly fee. And it's just, we're going to offer you software as a service, Office 360. And then there's this network marketing, which, everyone's like, ooh, network marketing, Tupperware, Mary Kay, Avon, Herbalife. There's a bunch of these network type marketing things. All of these are different models, different ways you can offer your products and services and make money. So you have to figure out, based on what you have for a product and a service during the summer, which one of these or what combination of these might potentially work best for me. And you have to consider things around the cost front. If I offer it online, I don't have to maybe ship it to the stores, but I'm going to have to spend a lot of money marketing, meaning online advertising, et cetera, to get somebody to notice my product. But if I could get it placed in a retail store, well, then maybe I don't have to spend as much money advertising, but there my money is going to come from, I have to make sure it's available and it's researched. I might have to pay some product placement fees. You just have to look at the cost structures and figure out, for the revenue I'm getting, what are my costs, what are my profits, and what makes the most sense? And or can I use a combination of a couple of these? Maybe I'm going to do both, online local delivery and a subscription for something. Or maybe I can do a subscription and everybody that subscribes, I'm going to sell their data. I'm not saying I recommend any of that. I'm saying you have to look at all the different things, all these different models, and try to figure out, how can I make these work for me? So once you've come up with a business model, you want to try to assess your business model design. In other words, is my business model pretty good? So these are some questions that we use actually in our capital company to try to figure out, is the business model for a business we are looking at or a business we have, pretty solid. And the goal is to have as high a score as possible. You want to have as many 10s or things leaning towards 10 as you can. In other words, this first one, switching costs. Well, nothing keeps my customers from leaving. my customers are locked in for years. Well, if they're locked in for years, that's a 10. If they could leave you tomorrow, that's a 0. All my sales are transactional. My sales are recurring revenues. You know, a razor is a great example of that. I sell you the blade, I should have recurring revenue because, I mean, I sell you the handle, I would have recurring revenue because you're going to constantly have to buy blades and blades wear out. Earning versus spending, game-changing cost structure, these are all things that, again, you can look at what the 0 is, 100% of costs are earned before revenue, or the Dell model. I got 100% of my revenue before incurring any cost of goods sold. I mean, when Michael Dell did his model where he was like, you pay for the computer, then I order all the parts for the computer, it was game-changing to industry because he earned 100% of his revenue before incurring any of his cost of goods sold. It allowed him to rapidly expand his business because his working capital was not very high. Okay, here's a few others just to think about or look at. You know, who does the work? Others. You know, others do the work. I have to do all the work for, you know, the value created in my business, or it's created by external parties. You know, external parties, right? You're filling, everybody's working on the site, Twitter's getting all this data from everybody else, and then they're selling it. So the value is being created by the external parties. All of these people working. Uber, value is created by the external parties. All the drivers that are out there. Scalability. Does it require a lot of more assets to grow? Or, nope, I can grow pretty fast and I don't have to put a lot more money into assets. That's why software is such a great thing, because it's very scalable. Because once you've built it and gotten the money into it, it scales rapidly and you don't have this, you know, it's not like a steel plant where if I want to make more steel, I build another plant. In software, it's very small incremental costs to rapidly expand the business. And then what kind of competition do I have? Protection from competition do I have? You know, I have a very unique thing in the marketplace, hard to replicate. I have patents around it maybe, or, you know, that would make me not vulnerable, or and you know, hat manufacturers are a dime a dozen. Okay, so here's one example from a past RedLabs program. We're just about done. So you guys heard one of the founders the other day talking, and she was the founder of a product called Callie. Her initial business model, she wanted to sell it to physical therapists. She thought, that's how I'm going to penetrate the market. I'm going to sell to physical therapists. This will be great. The problem identified? Well, physical therapists didn't want to buy it because it eliminated the need for them. Remember, her thing was like a wearable device that told you on balance, like all your balancing exercises, were you doing them properly? Were you standing right? Were you touching your toe right? All the things you had to do to improve your balance and your equilibrium. Well, if the PT's not there to tell you, and this device did it, then the PT is no longer needed, meaning the PT physical therapist. And so it basically would take their job away from them. So her initial business model, or her initial idea, I know I'll sell it to physical therapists, that kind of fell apart as she started getting into more research, because she realized, well, that's not a good market or a good initial place to go try to make sales. So she had to come up with a different business model, which she talked to you guys about in the last class. So that's everything we have on kind of business models. You are going to do a couple of in-class exercises, which Kelly's going to lead for you, as I will be on the road that day. But I will be available always for phone calls, emails, questions. So if you have anything else you want to know about, please feel free to give me a holler. And I appreciate you guys providing feedback on how the video learning is versus the Zoom learning. We're trying some new things. So hopefully this will go well. You guys have a great week.